Okay, thank you very much for attending on a Sunday morning at 8:30. My name is Alex Rialp. Okay, I'm local, but not from Madrid. I am from Barcelona. And I was not supposed to be chairing, but all right. And it seems I have to wear the mask anyway. But Maria Charvesio and Rubina Romanello were assigned as chairs for this session, but they, as you can see, they are not here. But hopefully we have Rubina online, so she will be able to conduct a little bit the presentation he had in plan. And actually, this is a kind of interactive session, although the room you see is not really very helpful for it. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 works to be dealt with in this session. I just want to make sure that the different people implied is in the room, okay? So first work is by Lapeira Kundu and Kumasam Wami. Are they here?
No, Lapeira wrote me she couldn't make it.
Couldn't make it?
Yeah.
Okay, so no, this paper is not going to be presented. Do you? Okay, so we will have one less, I understand. Second paper is by, sorry, I don't have the given names, just the surnames.
Johanna.
Raitis and Pelto, they are there, okay? So the paper is not just money, yes, and something else. Next is by Italian people, actually. Tommaso, you talk about do you need top management team diversity to speed up, okay? Yeah. Then Rubina will present, and finally Vera. I know Vera, she was in my university, right? Okay, so we will start with, I don't know exactly if you have some material to show on your respective works. Maybe we can do that in a row and leave the rest of the time just to make any kind of comment, any kind of question. All right, I think we could do this way, and we make sure all.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Johanna Raitis, and here's my co-author Elina Pelto. We are from Turku, from University of Turku from Finland. And is this okay? And we're presenting a paper called Not Just Money. It's an explorative study on the role of credit agencies, credit guarantee for the growth and internationalization of SMEs. So this study was actually started a few years ago when we had the opportunity to do an impact study for this Finnish credit guarantee agency. They wanted to know what is their impact, what is the impact of the guarantees that they're giving to small companies, to medium-sized companies, and to large companies. And then from this data set, we focused on the SMEs. And now we're presenting this first version, very early draft of our study here. Okay, so what we aim to do is we aim to explore from the data how the financing, how the guarantees actually contribute to the SME's growth and internationalization. We focus on exploring their perceptions. So the entrepreneurs, the founders' perceptions, their own perceptions of how the guarantee is actually helping them in their, when they're establishing the company, when they're growing, when they're going abroad. There's plenty of literature that we could actually use in this study, but I mean, we all know that these startups, these small, medium-sized companies need a lot of resources. First of all, to get established, to start their business, and then to grow, and then to go internationalize. But the problem for many of these companies is that they don't have possibilities for financing. If they're just starting up, they're not known, they just have an idea. So it might be really difficult to get a loan from the bank, for example. And here, the credit agencies have a big role to help. But so far, we don't know much about the influence of these export credit agency services on small companies. There's some literature, but with this explorative study, we aim to really understand this phenomenon better. So it's a qualitative study. We have multiple cases. So we have 5 small and medium-sized companies participating in this study. We had other companies, but we chose these 5 since they were SMEs. So other criteria that we had was that they have had to be collaborating with Finnvera since their establishment. So they started up their company with the help of Finnvera. And then also they have had to start their internationalization, and they have used Finnvera's financing throughout their entire journey, from the start till today. So in various phases of growth in their history. So we collected data using with interviews, with semi-structured interviews. We interviewed actually the entrepreneurs, the founders of these companies, and then we also interviewed the Finnvera's counterpart. So because in Finnvera you always have a person who is in charge of each particular company. So we also interviewed that person. And these are our preliminary findings. I have to go closer here. So basically, what we discovered was that, first of all, we saw that the role of Finnvera as an enabler of we call it phased evolution of these companies. So their survival, the establishment, their growth and internationalization, it was evident in all these 5 cases. So Finnvera was very much needed, a necessary resource, a necessary partner throughout their history. So they couldn't have done any of it without Finnvera. And there were like many issues that the Finnvera's assistant helped the companies, because the companies came from different fields. So there were different kinds of, for example, developing a product, developing a service, hiring key people, etc. So they're very basic things that needed to be done. But then actually what was really interesting, and what we are trying to now focus on more clearly in this paper, is that we actually discovered that besides of all these important and necessary issues that the guarantee provided to the company, it also gave, in the first stage, in the establishment phase, it gave the founders belief in their business. And that actually made a difference. So because before they might have gone to the bank and the bank manager might have said, no, it doesn't sound too good. They had difficulties in starting up, but when getting okay from Finnvera, it actually showed them, actually, this is a good idea, that I have something here. So it really boosted their self-confidence as an entrepreneur, and really, got them really excited, and it really drove their further actions. And then in later phases, again, when the company started to go to internationalize, to go to exporting and selling their goods and services abroad, we also found out that when the external stakeholders like potential customers, partners abroad, when they realized that Finnvera was actually behind these companies, a Finnish credit agency, it gave them a lot of credibility in the eyes of these partners and customers. So again, it wasn't just the money, but it was actually credibility that helped these companies to internationalize. And that's what we're trying to focus on in this study. So it's first building the self-confidence of the founder, of the entrepreneur in the first phase, and then building credibility in the eyes of the external stakeholders. So it's not just the money. And to conclude, we are suggesting that this study could be contributing to the, first of all, to literature on public export assistance and ECA financing, by bringing forward also this psychological element of the support. I think this is something that hasn't been really focused on or studied or before. Maybe, but we have to do some more literature review to check that, of course. So it's more about these indirect effects that have an impact and that we are trying to discover. And I suppose as practical implications, we would encourage SMEs to more actively take advantage of these ECA's financial services, because it's something that the SMEs and startups, they feel that it's too difficult, it wouldn't work anyway. So we actually discovered that this partnership with Finnvera is really, really good in many ways. They have these contact persons and they help them, they see their plans and comment on them. So it's a really, really beneficial collaboration with Finnvera. It's not just a bureaucratic government agency, but it's really boosting their business. But also then from the other side, Finnvera should be really communicate more about these possibilities and the benefits of their services, and not just that you can apply for this loan and that, but actually, what is it that these loans can actually give your business and help you to establish the business and grow the business and internationalize. Okay, thank you. The next presentation, right? Or
No. Alex, what do you think? Shall we ask questions right now? Maybe it's. I think it's better to discuss as soon as we can.
Yeah, so that we don't forget.
Yeah, so we don't forget, and it's more straight to the point. So if there are questions there.
Yeah, there are.
Or I have questions.
I have a question too.
We will not hear you unless you share the microphone, but maybe we just can shape the question.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. My comment or suggestion about the as far as I know in China, there has been some from Udine University, I think.
Okay.
About the role of it and how the income also not related, but related to reducing side business and
Yeah.
letting the entrepreneur and possible life.
Okay. Good.
There is something very much aligned with your.
Okay. Excellent. Very good. Yeah. That would be really good. So there was a comment, or actually very good advice, that we should actually look into China, and there's some research being done in Fudan University about the same topic. Excellent. Yep. I think.
Curious about how companies started the initiation from the beginning, because I mean this is kind of a specific product that would be that are today to the very early stages on, and also how does this, for example, is there some kind of selection bias that way? There's of course also the survival bias in there, and have you also checked some companies that did not make it? What's the
Yeah. So obviously not all the companies get there. I mean, you have to have a good business plan and it's evaluated, but I think it can be in any field. Like in these 5 companies, they come from different fields, but they have very good professionals in Finnvera evaluating the business plan. And if they see potential in it, then, you know, the road is open, then they help you and then you get what you need. But of course, not just you have to be prepared, have an idea to get in. But even though if you would have an idea, you might still not get the financing from other, you know, from banks or elsewhere, but this is the place to go. Yeah. 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 It's only the success stories that we are showing here. We don't know about the rest. That was the comment and discussion about. Yeah. No, unfortunately, about the data collection. So we just did it in one time. So they were already internationalized. We just accessed the companies once. So they had to reflect back on the you know, different phases. But these were the founders, and maybe the time frame was something like, maybe they started the company around 2 years ago, 2 years prior when we discussed with them. So we could assume that they still remembered the phases quite well. And then of course we also discussed with the counterpart in Finnvera, who had all the facts and, you know, what had happened in different phases. But yeah, it didn't happen longitudinally. Yeah, in that sense. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 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 I hope you are able to follow a little bit there. Uh-huh.
They want to say something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hi. Can I ask a question? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for your presentation. I do have a work in progress which is really similar with a double perspective on quite a different sample, because it's financing from an export regional agency, so not focused on export, to SMEs or even medium companies, which are not startups anyway. So it's quite different, but the double perspective is something enriching. So I think this aspect could be, how can I say, enhanced more, like maybe looking at the initial objectives of their support. So was that support mainly financial, or there was a different kind of support, also non-financial support, training support, because as you suggested, as the main finding, the psychological support emerged also from our study. But this is quite a core result, which is also difficult to measure in a quantitative study, if I could say. So I think you could maybe organize the analysis session by somehow looking at both the objectives of the agency and the company. So to see if the objectives were mostly more structured, more objective, or were they following and supporting the company? So I don't know if you get the point.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they're offering is just financial instruments, but as they are collaborating, it's so much more than just the financial instruments. But it's not visible. It's not, voiced out that this is all the things that you get actually when participating in this process. So, and I think that's why the small companies don't know all the benefits that actually come out. But yeah.
Yeah, we found the same. So
Yeah.
about financial support initially, but actually it came out that the most impacts were related to psychological aspects, skills transfer, practices. So I think that's the very interesting part. So what you cannot get from the surface.
Yeah.
So,
do you have something already published in this?
Unfortunately not. My other paper in ABA was on public support. So I have a literature review, which could be helpful for you on public support and performance, and this multiple case study, which is still in progress.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can be in touch later.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can, I have a comment too. I don't know if you can hear me, you can see me,
Yeah.
you can just hear me. Yeah, and thank you for your presentation. And I was thinking more or less the same thing, and was thinking if maybe you can highlight a bit the process of getting the getting money. I mean, you were saying it's not just having money, but maybe if I can imagine that there is a kind of consultancy service, even if not very clear, but maybe the company can give advice or something like that, maybe during the process. I'm not sure. On the other hand, maybe considering that we have small companies that maybe they're not very well structured, even in their internal processes, just the fact of presenting a business plan, a clear business plan in order to get the money could be something that helps the company to be more clear in their strategy. And so even this helps. And it's part of all these hidden things that happen during this process of getting money, but maybe by highlighting the procedures, the step the companies have to do, and all these activities they should undergo, can explain better why at the end there is a good result compared to other, ways of getting money. So just a thought.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very good, useful points.
Basically, also my comment, because I also recently, the last year, I collaborated with a similar agency in Italy, which is called Sace, and they also offer financial support, because we beyond financial support, and they have been developing a lot of tools with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Economic Development, and they offer a dashboard, so like a pool of tools, to support SMEs and exports, and many things that you said, really resonate with, what I've also experienced in my collaboration with this agency. So the fact that some companies, some reason they don't receive like this, they don't reach, like this financial support just because they're not informed. But the one they do, actually, they turn out to be very successful. And one of the reasons that we have done some research as well, what we found out actually is that
one of the reasons why this company are also performing very well, other than low interest, loans, and access to credit, which is problematic, of course, for SMEs, is also that they get a lot of as Maria said, unstructured consulting support. So they get a lot of information about destination countries, the risk,
yes,
all the information,
yeah,
legal activities, required to export there.
yeah,
Also the fact that, as Maria said, if you need to develop a business plan, you need to structure yourself, right? So, and this process, really helps them also to be successful.
true, yeah, very good points.
It's kind of like engineers, So you apply there, in order to apply, structure yourself, and then you force yourself.
Yeah. I think Finvera also has these services about, they really about the markets. So they have a lot of knowledge and information that they are delivering and sharing, but I think they could do a lot more.
Perhaps the two agencies, I don't know to what extent this national agency they talk to each other.
Yeah, yeah. The dashboard thing was really interesting. Thank you very much.
I think that's probably maybe the last question, very shortly, because you mentioned at the beginning, that you are talking about practical part of your research and communications. I'm doing another research similar to Connected when I'm studying communications of the different programs towards improving intention. So for me, it's very interesting. What do you see as the problems of communications? So what could be these problems that you found out because you mentioned as a practical part?
Maybe they just don't know. Maybe people don't go and make the business plan because it's unclear. They don't have enough information, maybe, or the right kind of information. I don't know. We don't know that yet, really, but.
Fully aware of electronic agencies support for that. So they apply to big companies, and that is something that credit agencies should better communicate to small businesses that we are here to do.
Yeah, because now actually the issue of connection between these practices that exist and communication part, how to increase the scope of participants. So that can be very interesting as a future to reach lines for connections with other disciplines like marketing, for example, to react to it. So that's very interesting that you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, even though you would really desperately need to do it, but you still feel that you don't have the time.
And for these companies, very often they try to get clients.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It tells that you go there only after nothing else. It is that it's at least considered.
Wow, it seems that there's already a lot of knowledge about this topic, so yeah. Okay. Yeah. What are the requirements to get in? I don't know exactly. I don't know whether they have some measurements, or whether they just try to understand the big picture, whether it's quite subjective, or how do they do it? I don't know. Yes. But how do they evaluate that? I don't know.
more about this. So I was wondering,
Good. Okay. Yeah.
This was that for Rubina and Nadia listen well as the person who is presenting or speaking needs to repeat the question.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe we could. Maybe I could just, come. Maybe the presenter could just come closer and share the microphone. Yeah.
Yes. I can do it. It's called internationalization speed. Okay. 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 Yeah, the last one. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Tommaso Vallone. I'm a graduating PhD student from Anle Business School. Be formally a doctor in January. And in the meantime, I'm also working at Politecnico di Milano as a research fellow. So today I'm presenting a paper which is co-authored with Michele Pinelli from Ca' Foscari University from Venice and Francesco De Belli from University of Vienna. So the title, I think, is quite straightforward. So what we look at in this paper is whether top management team diversity, well, for top management team, of course, I talk about like those decision makers at the helm, of the firm, whether their work experience diversity or their career diversity matters and helps the firm to increase, to boost the speed of internationalization. Okay, so I will do a premise first. I'm not an international entrepreneurship scholar, so I think some of my PhD research with deals with top management teams and internationalization. For different, to a large extent, there are some overlaps, but I'm not an expert of the field, so I beg you to be patient with me if I say something that doesn't really resonate with you. But from my understanding of the literature, international entrepreneurship research fundamentally deals with two aspects, which is the speed of internationalization of born globals or international new ventures. So firms which are like startups, which have been formed, let's say, and internationalized soon after or very few years after their inception. Okay, in some cases even from the very beginning. I mean, they maybe start from like a global platform and they start serving the domestic market together with also the foreign markets, right? And of course, international entrepreneurship research has brought us a lot of insights about these companies, which are fairly different from multinational companies, right? They're less structured, they have like usually more flat organization with an entrepreneur and a funding team, right? And also has helped us to understand, this entities, which, as I said, is different from M&Es, And the international business theory is mostly focused instead with those large multinational companies, right? And then as explained internationalization more as a, say, gradual process through which firms, they commit resources to their foreign markets, in a more, let's say, in increasing manner by gaining new knowledge, about foreign markets, which also reduces the perception of risk, While born globals international new ventures are very different, like in some cases, entrepreneurs, they don't have like a lot of knowledge about the foreign market, but still go and they are certainly like more risk prone, So, I mean, international entrepreneurship research has helped us to understand these different entities, and to some extent has also defied in traditional international business research because of this, or at least has provided complementary knowledge to that. So, international entrepreneurship research is mostly focused on speed of internationalization, defined as the time required for the firm and the entrepreneur to make the first international, let's say, investment, right? So it has been measured in different ways, but it is mostly been measured as the years required to do the first international establishment, right? And of course, it's also focused very much, as explained this speed of internationalization, very much also on the role, by looking at the role of the entrepreneurs. So by looking at the characteristics of the entrepreneurs, right? So their international experience, we have papers on retournee, we have papers that look at the human capital by looking at the level of education, social capital by looking at the networks of the entrepreneurs, also the prior experience in the foreign markets, international studies, but also a lot of research has been looking at the more, let's say, more directly at the psychological traits of the entrepreneurs. So the risk propensity, the long-term vision, the proactivity, the entrepreneurial orientation, right? In this paper, we are not looking at born globals, we are not looking at international new ventures, but we're looking at more mature firms, firms which are not large multinational companies, firms that are mostly SMEs, but they are also like slightly bigger than SMEs. We're looking from firms that are from 50 to 1,000 employees, but most of them are actually below 1,000. The average, I think, is around 400 employees. And these firms are firms that have been also established like 50, 60, 70 years ago. So are mature organizations that have established the international presence quite late, in a late stage of their life. Okay. And they, are so internationalizing quite late compared to born globals international new venture. And from our perspective, these firms have not been, the study of speed of internationalization for this firm is very limited, both in the international business research and also in the international entrepreneurship research. And what we realize is that many of the insights that international entrepreneurship research has brought us may not be fully applied for these organizations, which are still different, are more structured than born globals or international new ventures. One key difference is that in this organization, you might have an entrepreneur, but it's most likely to be a CEO actually. So there is a CEO together with a small management team. Okay, so decisions are made by let's say a group of actors. Okay, so decisions are mostly collegial decisions, where certainly the CEO has got a lot to say, and is a central figure, of course, perhaps more than in large multinational companies. And this is also explained by the upper echelon theory, whose inceptional paper is Ambrick and Mason, 1984. And it shows how decisions in mature organization are most likely reflected by the result of group decision making, and a result of course the inputs from the CEO, as well as also the inputs of the other top management teams, where the CEO is basically the leader of this group. I mean, this literature, the upper echelon theory literature, nowadays it's called like strategic leadership theory, strategic leadership research, has been looking at how these characteristics of the top managers and their experiences, will be somewhat reflected in the strategic decisions of the firms. But limited research has been looking at the speed of internationalization as an outcome, mostly looking at foreign market entries and location choice, but really limited research on speed. So in this study, we consider top management team diversity as our, let's say, key independent variable, as our theoretical, let's say, key theoretical construct, because there is lots of literature that looks at the diversity of the top management teams, both in terms of demographics, of course, age, gender, diversity, gender, and educational background, and so on and so forth, but also looking at the diversity of their career experiences, right? So whether they have worked in different industries, whether they worked in different countries, functional experience, and so on and so forth. And all this literature has shown that diversity has an impact on their individual cognitions by improving their, enhancing their cognitions, enhancing their information processing capacity, enhancing their creativity, and at the team level also improving decision-making comprehensiveness, some more quality, perhaps not speed, but there is mixed evidence on that. But certainly brings like a lot of knowledge, different perspective to the team, and also social capital to the team, right? So diversity has been seen to influence, to impact positively both social capital and human capital, right? Social capital, which is of course fundamental for speed. If you think that you need to identify and spot opportunities in international markets, and you do so also through your networks, right? So here we hypothesize a positive impact of TMT work experience heterogeneity on speed of internationalization. However, diversity literature is thought that the diversity might be a double-edged sword, to the extent that diversity has also some negative implications. We don't talk too much about them because it's somewhat like, inconvenient to say, but it might also trigger to some, dysfunctional processes within the team. And, population, organizational anthropology literature, and, has shown us through social identity theory that diversity could trigger social categorization processes, which creates, which leads to the formation of subgroups within the team. So people who are more similar with common experiences will tend to group with each other. And you will have subgroups within the top management team groups and all. And this, of course, will be detrimental to decision-making, to the overall, let's say, decision-making capability, information processing capacity of the team, because you cannot fully leverage, all the qualities, all the good stuff that comes from diversity, let's say, because the team gets fragmented, right? And so the point here is try to understand what mechanisms or what could be the contextual factors that trigger these negative processes within the team. And here we are arguing that one of these possible mechanisms, of course, there is literature on TMT fault lines, there is like abundant literature on this. One fundamental aspect is the CEO-TMT interface. So the relationship between the CEO as the central figure and the rest of the management team. And what we hypothesize is that when the CEO-TMT will have different functional experiences, so they somewhat talk different languages because of the previous functional experiences, this will not help facilitate communication, might lead to misunderstanding, might negatively affect, interpersonal trust. And so this could actually trigger those negative dysfunctional mechanisms that can be, the result of diversity. So we test this hypothesis with UK sample of listed public firms, manufacturing firms. And I collected manually mostly data about top management teams and all the individuals, so composing the team in a panel data manner from 2008 until 2018. And I collected all the experience of all the members from the very beginning of their career until the moment they were appointed to the firm. They were, managers in the firm. And I also collected manually the speed of internationalization. So I collected manually all the FDIs for these firms, actually, for this period. And speed of internationalization here is measured as the number of FDIs undertaken by the firm in a 3 years period. So we are considering like this 3 years period in a rolling basis. So, and this is our dependent variable, while the management team work experience diversity considers 3 aspects of work experience: functional, industry, and international. And then we create this aggregated index. So, yeah. I'm done. Okay, I'll skip this. So these are, our results are actually confirmed by our statistical analysis. We ran like, oh my God, a panel data analysis, a Poisson regressions, and they are positively supported. This is the interaction effect, which shows that, the effect of diversity is really negatively affected by certainty functional dissimilarity. And these are the conclusions. So we believe to contribute to the international entrepreneurship and also more broadly to the international business literature by investigating speed of internationalization for more mature organizations. So medium, like small and medium enterprises that have internationalized later on. And also we contribute to the strategic leadership literature, to the operational literature, to, by unraveling some of the mechanisms within the top management team that can lead to some, that can lead diversity to some, let's say, negative or unwanted outcomes, let's say. Okay, that's all. I'm sorry if I took too much time. No, man. No, but you're right, absolutely. Time management is my... Yeah, no, definitely, no, you do. Yeah, so you measure it by looking first for each member. So you look at all the careers. So it's like think of a CV, you put in the CV in an Excel row, basically, right? And you create categories, for all the functional experiences. So like you can have like a production functional experience, human resource management functional experience, general management, financial, and so on and so forth. I rely on a manual which was built by some scholars who are quite, let's say, expert on the field, like from St. Gallen University. They've been researching on this a lot. The dissimilarity. How can you, let's say, so your question, if I understood correctly, is that how can you imply from functional experience dissimilarity that there will be lack of communication, let's say? Yeah, it's not, this is the issue of all this literature that you are implying. You are relying on theory though. There is theory which talks about homophily, they talk about, it's relational demography research, which has actually done those psychometric tests, and those, let's say, more direct observation. So this, of course, is implied, but I mean, it's really grounded on theory and observation, I mean, from psychology scholars, right? And, but of course, it's not measured directly, you know. But the other side of the coin is that also, how can you really measure those things? Like, I mean, if you do a survey, I mean, there are always like pros and cons of this data, right? Of course, this is somewhat indirect measure of it, which still grounds on like psychology research. But then you could say, yes, I mean, I go and measure it and ask them, right? But first of all, it's physically impossible to ask top managers, you know, about this. And also when you ask, you know, about such sensitive things, you know, like, are you an effective communicator? I mean, first of all, if you ask the question in the morning, they might give you an answer. If you ask in the afternoon, you know, something bad happens, or might be a different answer. And I mean, I've done lots of surveys and I've kind of seen that. And second of all, I mean, everyone will say, yeah, of course, I'm a great leader. Or so, I mean, there are ways to compensate there, of course. But yeah, I mean, we do acknowledge limitations of what we do, but I mean, yeah, but I get your point. Yeah. You can. Yeah. Yeah, because that's a good question. So, and also it gets, I get asked all the time, I submit this to a paper, so this to a journal. So yeah, it's a good point. So UK, I mean, I was researching the UK first, so there was, but that is of course not the answer. So UK, I mean, is certainly a very representative country within Europe, and I think also within within the world, you know, as a country that, I mean, has a very substantial weight of all foreign FDIs. So UK firms do a lot of foreign investments, you know, and they internationalize actually more, I mean, to a larger extent than many other firms in Europe. And this also may due to the, you know, past colonial ties and, you know, and other different reasons, you know. But this is observed if you look at FDI stocks, you know, like it was in 2015, UK was like the second largest country in the world in terms of FDI. So, and I'm looking at FDIs, right? So this is like a representative country for that. And then, I mean, there is also another aspect, which is about the top managers. And I mean, what I've realized by looking at this, collecting this data myself, if you want to look at aspects such as the international experience, and even diversity, actually, that if you focus on other European countries, except perhaps Switzerland, these teams are extremely homogeneous, extremely homogeneous. Even in the UK, I mean, like I couldn't use gender diversity because there is no gender diversity. It's like one female CEO out of 150 firms. Perhaps I'm also looking at not massively big firms, you know, that also make a difference, but still. And, you know, the labor market in the UK is quite attractive for many managers and all over the world. And that brings you a lot of foreign people in the UK. Also because there are no language barriers, right? Because everyone speaks English. So UK is somewhat like, I would say, like the States and few other countries in the world, like maybe also the Netherlands, to some extent Germany too, and Nordic countries maybe more and more. But it's one of those countries that allows you actually to study this phenomena because, you know, you see some heterogeneity in the data. Yeah. But it is manually collected though. So I manually collected it. So, but still, I mean, if I had like access to Bordex, which now I have, of course I could have done like, although I mean, these secondary databases, apart from being extremely expensive, but they're actually used by companies mostly for networking purposes like Bordex, they don't have this in-depth career of the managers from like, I'm really like collecting their experience, you know, they worked in company A, in 90, 80 in company B, from 1990 to 95 in that specific country. They usually don't have very good data on that, you know, with that depth, you know, but still, yeah, but that would allow you to do something. Yeah. Have you got a question, Rubina?
Hi, Tommaso. Thank you. Just a quick comment. I find your article very interesting, your work very interesting. I might suggest you to change the positioning of the paper, because actually you are not looking at the dimensions of born globalness. Well, the literature starting from Born Globals now has moved to the focus on speed of internationalization, which is now also measured as a multidimensional construct. So I saw you quoted Casillas and Axido. Yes, they are working on that, but there are also Hilmerson, for example, works of Hilmerson and Johnson, and also Shetty. So maybe she was the first one proposing a multidimensional construct for speed, if I'm not wrong. So maybe I would leave aside the Born Global literature somehow, because you are looking at mature companies which are maybe not even SMEs, because if I heard well, they have a huge number of employees also, and they are listed. So maybe focusing straight on the speed of internationalization could help you, because Born Global could be a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
So I think your main contribution is to that literature instead of Born Globals, even if it's true that Born Globals have somehow undercovered some aspects, and they have moved the focus from entry modes to entry time. But actually, you are not really looking at the time the companies needed to go international at the first in the first foreign market. So the literature on Born Globals is quite well defined right now, and it has expanded. So that's very good, and I think this is the right time for your study to come up. But maybe that could be a better positioning for your paper, but that's just a suggestion.
No, I mean, I actually agree. I mean, there was decision of my first co-authors to position in this way, but then, yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of literature about speed of internationalization, and all the papers you mentioned, yeah, they are extremely valuable contribution. I agree. I also don't think that international entrepreneurship is the right positioning for the paper. I mean, but actually, I was curious to get also this feedback on this, but yeah, I fully agree. Yeah, thank you for your comment.
So maybe you can look also at, I didn't see it quoted, Roiber and Fischer, which are some of the starting articles on top management teams and international growth. So that could be also.
Which one?
Roiber and Fischer.
Roiber and Fischer, 1997? Or...
1997, 2002, yeah.
Okay.
Meanwhile, good morning, everyone, and I'm very glad to be here to present our research. We are actually doing research together with Nestor Salceda and presenting to different schools here. So I present the High School of Economics, Graduate School of Business from Russia, from Moscow, and Nestor presents two universities, which is Autonomous University of Barcelona and the SAN Graduate School of Business from Peru. So we are doing the study of the role of international on institutional context on the entrepreneurial intention among young students, and we study inter-country comparison. Actually, as you can see, we are very multinational group, even we are two people over here. So doesn't work. Yeah, I don't mind. Next one, please. So I'm going to skip the introduction and we go directly to the idea. So what is coming from the idea? The idea comes from the perspective that we have entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship nowadays have difficult issues regarding the crisis. So some data from Global Entrepreneurship Monitor demonstrating directly Spain and Russia. A small spoiler because we are comparing the data from students from two countries. from Russia and from Spain, is a good point to compare because they're actually not that far located one from another, but they are quite different in a lot of aspects. And international labor organizations that always state that young are under the pressure of unemployment. So entrepreneurship of young can be a solution for a lot of issues. However, recently we did a research in the School of Tourism in Barcelona and published it that obstacles still exist. The students still consider a lot of problems regarding their entrepreneurship activities. So literature review, I just put all in one slide because for sure all of you are specialists and understand very good the issues that exist. If to conclude and to make one or two more important mentions here, that there are internal and external variables that affect entrepreneurship intention. And we are focusing specifically on external one because we are interested in the international differences and institutional context. So additionally, we found out that there are some variations of the relative importance that can be very helpful further for the government organizations to create some initial support. We found out that a part of institutional context, there are some theories that state that economy type also affect on the entrepreneurial behavior. So one thing is intention, another part is behavior. And behavior is a part of our actually cognitive response to some experience that we have. So joining together these two ideas and also considering that entrepreneurship is still a big gender gap and gender issue, we started from these 3 points. So where we arrived and what we have, I don't know where it's supposed to move. I don't know where should I point. Maybe with a keyboard. I'll give it to me just. So the data and what we have collected until the moment we are in the process of data collection. So the data is not a big number. We have actually for the moment 72 respondents from Russia and 132 from Spain. Interesting that we have more or less the same percentages of the respondents. What we are measuring is gender and entrepreneurial intention level. So we use likely scale from 1 to 5, how eager you are to be entrepreneur. And also we are applying this comparison. We have collected data in April, May 2021. We are still in the process. We apply t-test, ANOVA, MANOVA, and some other methodologies that help us to make a comparison. So what we have found is more interesting. We have found that there are some factors that affect more and affect differently. So you can see relative importance that is different between Spain and Russia. If we see the Spanish respondents, previous one, please. The Spanish respondents, they are focusing more or considering more that factor 5, which is technology, is very important for entrepreneurial intention, development of new technologies. While in Russia, for example, access to financial resources is first priority, considering the t-test. And on the green one, we found out that there are some factors that have differences. And this factor, with further analysis, we can conclude that they are actually institutional context factors that really matters and they really differ. So out of all, interesting that not financial support, because it's obviously for everyone will be important, doesn't matter the context and the country. The difference will be the level of education, the bureaucracy level, and technology, government support. Interestingly, to save some time, we further did regression analysis, and technology and MANOVA analysis, technologies disappear, because if we just measure one by one parameters, we see them different. But when we take as a complex model, we found out that technologies then disappear, and the priority will be education differences, bureaucracy differences, and government support differences. And the factor 3 with this bureaucracy is negative, which means that in Spain, it's a more disruptive obstacle. And I think if you have known ever Spanish, or I think Italian, maybe very similar bureaucracy in the application, that's really the problem. And even we consider Russia as a very bureaucratic country, occasionally Spain is even more problematic in this issue. So this is very interesting differences that we found, of course, to discuss. Next one, please. So we just considered gender as well. And in gender, we have factor 4, which is here disappeared from the slide. Factor 4 was cultural distance, and cultural differences, they are affecting indirectly gender, cultural norms. But after I have information that it's mostly happened between perception of women in Russia, where the cultural norms are still very impacting women entrepreneurship. And in Spain, these differences does not appear. Interestingly, our previous studies was about support of women and their entrepreneurial activities, but maybe that's not the priority anymore. And instead, a solution should be found for the bureaucratic administrative processes to support entrepreneurs. So, and entrepreneurial intention very much depend on educational level, which is obvious because we actually asking students, and if they study, it's because they are aiming for some future results, and also they are from administrative and business, not administrative, business administration studies. So they studied entrepreneurship actually a lot. So let's go to conclusions. In Manova, that's what I mentioned about the women. We found individual effects, we found complex model differences. So we saw how technology level disappear and put on more other factors. We compared developed and developing economies and take into account the gender differences, the theoretical, and the last one, it's practical implementation. So as I mentioned already, for policymakers, it's global economies. Entrepreneurship is global issue. All the countries of the world get affected by COVID, and some of them increased, some of them, and most of them decreased. Then improvement of educational level and supporting of young entrepreneurs keep being very important issues. However, we need to consider updating government policies, facilitating bureaucratic administrative procedures, communicating government policies, also important issues that I already commented, and we are doing the next study, communicating issues. We are analyzing from the perspective of communicating exactly government policies, and we also found out in the poster, by the way, I have it with me here. We found also interesting things. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments, I will appreciate a lot. I hope I did it shortly.
Would be entrepreneurs that come from. So seeing that so many female were people were represented in the sample, I think it's not what it's common to expect. We would have a more high presence of male entrepreneurs and studying across gender. Here it was really unbalanced in that way, but it's good news. I think good news means that there are many young female people aiming at becoming entrepreneurs. So I just want to stand out that issue, which is uncommon to see. I need it in many other samples. Any comments? Yeah, sure.
Do you mean that why does not appear differences and cultural effects on the women? So they do not perceive that norms and values anymore create pressure. And actually we can explain this because we did a previous study on the female support, and actually female support in Spain, we did study specifically. We found out that it doesn't have that high impact, and that's not a high obstacle, or it does not favorable impact on the entrepreneurial intention. So women in Spain, I think they reach the level when they feel convenient with their activities of directors, of managers. And I personally feel myself here because I'm represent from the Russian culture and from the Spanish culture, because I have been living and working in both. And I don't feel here pressure of being director. And I think I have a lot of opportunities because I'm a woman in Spain, rather than it's a little bit different, and you are starting to feel. So women stop considering this as a problem, and there are already research that confirms this. It's interesting because the other thing that women in our sample is more limitation, because when you make a survey, girls are more often answers than boys. That's why we have more women than boys, because we do not make them to do it. It's like an voluntary opportunity to participate. But there's also great comment, because for us it's opportunity to justify why so many women, because we try to demonstrate, for example, gender difference. It can be interesting. It can be interesting to anyway talk about them.
If you want, maybe you can make a question to Rubina, and then you continue with your presentation.
Okay. Hi, Vera. Thank you for your presentation. I wasn't able to see the slides, so I don't know if I'm correct, but did you, I heard that you collected the data, that you used the data on 2021. So I wonder if it was possible to look at the same relationships before the lockdown. So because there are different evidences in the countries. In some countries, the new entrepreneurship levels increased, and in some others decreased. So that would be nice to compare with the ex ante, with the world before COVID and after COVID.
Thank you, Rubina. Yes, it could be great, but we have only data from Spain, so we will try. We are working on other articles on the same topic in the row. We have actually a work in progress on 3 articles in this topic, and this is really good. Unfortunately, from Russia, we do not have data, so that's why I justify that we check for Spain and Russia, because they're more similar on the changes that happen, because we have data from Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. That's why I put it, justifying that there are similar countries with similar changes. So we have to take away the data, the time point, but we will try to find out somehow and make comparison. That's very nice. Thank you.
So maybe also just using the GEM data.
Yes.
In a pre analysis phase. So that would be nice to see what emerges from the GEM data, and then better contextualize your results maybe.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very interesting point, of course. It would be very interesting to see exactly. Sorry, what can influence? I didn't listen. The vaccination of the ray. Okay, the issue of how they feel in general, because emotional. Yeah, thank you very much. I think I will give my microphone to Alex, maybe to you, and let Rubina.
Rubina, you have a chance to make it in about 5-7 minutes before or last.
Thank you. So let's share the screen.
Yeah, okay.
Just let me know if you can see it. I will try to be quick. Okay, so thank you for your time. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
We can see it. Yeah.
Here, I'm here to present a paper developed with my co-author Maria Chiarvesio from University of Udine as me. She's over there on the screen. It's really bad not to be with you, but at least we are here virtually, so it's a great opportunity. This paper is on Born Global's post-entry growth, or maybe more on growth processes, a balance between innovation and corporate governance. Well, we all know the literature on Born Globals, and so I will not spend some more time on this. There were some, recently there were some calls for research on Born Globals by looking at corporate governance issues. So responding to this call, we tried to develop to look a little bit better at the international corporate governance literature. We didn't come from this research area, so we explored it by looking at Aguilera and other papers, but mainly Aguilera. So the literature on corporate governance actually looks at ownership issues, the influence of top management teams, as we have seen so far, and board of directors. And finally, they look at governance practices. It has mainly focused on multinational companies by looking at several dimensions. I will not spend time on this. For what concerns SMEs and Born Globals or early internationalizing companies, the literature so far has focused on family ownership and institutional investors. So the influence mainly of this kind of aspects related to ownership and to the characteristics of top management teams in relation to several aspects related to internationalization. So internationalization decisions, but also the extent and scale of internationalization or the value creation of shareholders. Corporate governance topics, what is different? What is the main difference between multinational companies and Born Globals? Born Globals typically have owners, managers. So the agency problems and asymmetry problems should be reduced because there is some coincidence, but actually, and this should lead to rapid decision making, supporting the speed of decision making, which becomes an asset for the company. Well, actually, however, the literature on Born Globals has mainly looked at some aspects of, as I was saying, of corporate governance, even if it was not under this umbrella. They have looked at the firm environmental variables and their influence on some aspects of Born Globals, like decision to export or export propensity, extent and scale of internationalization, and that's it, value creation of shareholders. So far, the literature has highlighted a major influence of individual variables, so related to ownership, top management teams, characteristics and backgrounds, capabilities, and so on, and environmental variables on the Born Global's entry internationalization phase, while the literature on post-entry phase has mostly showed an influence of firm variables. However, in our view, there is something missing. So we think that actually there is the influence of the entrepreneur, which has reached some sort of consensus in the literature on Born Globals, is also influencing also the post-entry phase of Born Globals. So we developed an exploratory study. This is a real work in progress. It's a single case study of a Born Global, which we had the opportunity to follow over the last 5 years. So it's a longitudinal study. The company, very quickly, it's a manufacturing company which reached the 70% of export share after a few years, and is now present in more than 40 countries around the world. The ownership is a family firm with 2 founding brothers. It's a B2B and it operates in a mature sector. So let's go to the findings, to the case analysis and the initial findings. We have seen a strong influence of the owners managers in the initial phase of internationalization. This, I'm sorry, this confirms, this is aligned with the previous literature. So we saw the influence of the individual variables, environmental variables on the early and rapid internationalization. So on the initial internationalization of the company. Then, but here the literature had already confirmed this result, so related to the entry phase. Then we also saw, in line with previous research, that actually there was a kind of turning point during which the 2 owners managers assumed some distinct managerial roles to lead the growth of the company, the initial survival of the company after the 4th, 5th year of life. And they actually assumed these roles to balance between internationalization and innovation. And here some firm variables became a little bit more relevant. And this is also kind of aligned with past literature. But actually, when we enter the post-entry growth, we still see the ownership very relevant, and also the fact that the 2 owners managers had the possibility, kept their distinct roles in terms of managers. So one brother focused on sales and focused on the international expansion of the company, and the other one focused on the product innovation. So during this growth process, he was able to launch different product lines. So it's quite complex to give you the whole picture in a few minutes, but actually what we have seen, let's say it in simple ways. So let's go straight to the preliminary results. So we have seen that actually the Born Global successfully operated under asset parsimony by alternating innovation and internationalization goals, which actually were the 2 objectives that were able to support the growth of the company and somehow nurturing each other. So, but what is more important is actually that the 2 owners assume distinct managerial roles. So they alternatively drove innovation and internationalization, and they were somehow able to separate their ownership and managerial dimensions. So as you might understand, owners have long-term perspectives, while managers have short-term perspectives. So as managers, they had some objectives which could contrast with each other, and they were able to solve this some sort of conflicts by using some informal and semi-formal, I would say, corporate governance practices. So they used some forms, evaluating forms, to kind of objectively evaluate, assess the investments that should be made in innovation and internationalization. So this is the initial findings we had, and we need to get more in depth in this by looking at we have the opportunity right now to see how they are managing the generational shift. They have introduced nephews in the company, so they are carrying out this process by creating an holding right now, and we will go in depth in there. And then we also have the opportunity to see how they are managing this process. So which are the objectives, which are the kind of pillars that they use to settle the growth of the company for the next years. Well, we will collect more interviews. We will probably take part in a focus group with all the informants in the company. And I would say that's it. I'm sorry, I was quick. I don't know if I was able to provide you the whole picture, but actually it's an initial evidence. So thank you for your question, the time. And if you have any question, I'm here. And Maria also.
Thank you very much, Rubina, for also your summarized, but I guess pretty complete presentation in terms of content and time. We are over schedule. We are having time for breakfast now or short coffee, whatever. Does anyone has any very quick comment to make here, or otherwise we would close the session now? But I want you to know that in half an hour, among the different sessions that are open at that time, there is one panel session that is focused upon the issue that Rubina was telling about. So corporate governance in born global context or international ventures. So if you want to extend this kind of thinking or this kind of reflection, there is a panel coming on in 25 minutes about it. Okay, any quick comment you have?
Talk about all in general, but this is also, I think, an interesting case of a family firm that is also living through the generation shift. So maybe that way this could also be useful in the paper.
Yeah, good point. I mean, she's linking Born Global Firm examine case to family firm issue. And actually, I think that if you don't mind, Rubina, I can provide my quick comment to that, is because we have examining for a long time international new ventures and born global firms at the very early stage of their existence. So established by a given person of a founding team, whatever. But this is an example of a case that has matured, okay? And it started as a firm, but founded by two brothers, which makes it a family born global, and which is maturing because it's keeping on alive on time. And now second generations or other people from the family are joining also in management issues in the company. So yes, it also fits somehow reflections that can be linking born global firms and family businesses, which I recognize have not been too much taken into account together. I think it's a good comment here, and mostly linking it with corporate governance things. You know, we're talking about ownership as well here. So thanks. We should thank you, Rubina. Thank you, Maria, for connecting.
Thank you to you for this opportunity to
be
with you from
time for the coffee. And on 10:30, those of you who want to continue about this specific aspect, you can do it in one of the panels. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.